Okay, so today's topic that we're going to be talking about is the gut microbiome. So just give me a few moments to actually to share my screen. Okay, all right. So the the gut microbiome is a very, very important topic. Most of the research has only been done in recent years, and I have a bit of a gut feeling that um, as the years go on, we're gonna find out much more about the connection between the gut microbiome and the rest of our health all over our body, many different aspects of the body. So what is it? What is the gut microbiome? So there's trillions, which is a, a, a million billions. So no, is it a million billions? Yeah, it's a million billions. So it's a lot of microorganisms that live in and on you, so on your skin as well. So they're mainly bacteria, but they're all are also fungi and viruses, etc. And we literally live in a soup of these, I guess, invisible to the eye microorganisms. And the gut is the main location of where many of these live. And they have a very symbiotic relationship with us. So, symbiotic meaning that it's like a working relationship. They get something from the relationship from us, and we get something from them. So, it's a give and take type relationship. Like many things in nature are, we're all designed like ecosystems where it's like a little micro ecosystem where things in nature work together. So some mind-blowing facts that really sort of put it into perspective. And when I learned these facts many years ago, it started to really get me to see this from a different perspective. When they did the Human Genome Project, I think it was a few decades ago, they mapped out all the genes in the body, and um, they they found that they were surprised because we didn't have anywhere near the amount of genes as what they thought human beings were going to have. We had very similar to, I believe it was like a fruit fly, or it was something that was, more of a basic organism, and we were sort of expecting way more. And many of our genes are very closely identical to each other, and some other animals as well, some primates. But the big difference is, and this is sort of a new-ish field of research. So it's called epigenetics. And what it is, many scientists in this field, they talk about, um, your genes are like the gun, um, but I guess your environment, in other words, the way that you live your life, what you come into contact with, will is like the trigger. So of the gun. So whether it shoots or not. So it's almost like if you think of it's like a switch. So our epigenetics, the interaction of our genes with our environment and how we decide to live our life. So as an example, if we choose to smoke, if we choose to drink, if we choose to eat processed food, if we choose to have, too much screen time, lots of unhealthy things, then that's going to flick the switch on for the genes that I guess predispose us to getting certain perhaps cancers or different diseases and things like that. So, and then, on the other side of the equation, if we eat healthy, drink water, good quality water, we have good mental health practices, and just have a happy, fulfilling life, then we are much more likely to switch off the genes that could potentially lead us down to the pathway of disease, and switch on the genes that are going to be more likely to lead us to the pathway of optimal health and vitality. And another mind-blowing fact is that you are only 10% human. So, so from a genetic standpoint, 90% of the genes are from other, not our own. So in other words, what we're talking about is your microbiome. So all those, the bacteria and organisms that live in there, they interact with your gene expression as well. So, and it's a bit of a, like we said before, it's a symbiotic relationship. When we have healthy practices, we tend to proliferate healthy bacteria, like friendly bacteria that live symbiotically, and they can help to break down our food, and they get to feed off it, but then they also help to feed the nutrients to us. They help to interact with our immune system. Lots of different things. They in the gut, you produce a lot of your your things like sorry, they've escaped me the name of them. But the compounds that make us happy, like serotonin and things like that, it's all produced in the gut, and the gut microbiome has a very pivotal role, and the types of bacteria have a pivotal role into what happens there. So 9 out of 10 cells in your body are actually bacteria. So you can see that if you think of it like this, if you think of like a garden with healthy soil, will help to grow healthy vegetables. A garden with nutrient depleted soil that's just dirt, no life in the soil, weeds grow and things like that. So if you think of it like your body, when we create an environment that is healthy, then it's more conducive for healthy bacteria to be able to survive, proliferate, and then they're going to assist it with through that symbiotic relationship with us to give us optimal health. But the opposite is also true, that if we eat unhealthy food and live an unhealthy lifestyle, have lots of sugar and things like that, that's going to lead to more unfriendly gut bacteria to grow there, and then they're going to have they release toxins and things like that, and all other sort of things, and they'll trigger different genes. So that relationship can be a healthy relationship or an unhealthy relationship. So there is trillions of microorganisms that live. Sorry, my bad. I've already been this one. So Hippocrates, who was the forefather of modern medicine, doctors take like a Hippocratic oath when they become a doctor. And he's got tons and tons of quotes and just theories that are very true. He was around thousands of years ago, and they're still tried and true today. And he was obviously very, very intelligent and very aware of human body. They obviously didn't have the science that we have now, but he had an intuitive sense of a lot of things, and he was right on the money. He said, one of his famous quotes was, "All disease begins in the gut." So are there differences in gut microbiome between fit, lean individuals and those that are obese? Interesting question. And the answer is yes. They have done studies where they've done stool samples, and they've tested the biome in someone that is lean and fit compared to someone that is obese. And as you can imagine from what we were talking about just a moment ago, how the person that's obese is most likely eating processed foods. They're more likely to perhaps smoke or drink or have other unhealthy practices as well. They probably don't exercise a lot. So they're going to create an environment in their body that is going to be conducive to unfriendly bacteria to grow in there. And then that's going to affect the relationship of their body, their genes, and their body's propensity to store fat. Same with fit, lean people. They found that there's a completely different species and different types of bacteria that live in those. And again, they're related to the lifestyle that fit and lean person leads. So yeah, as I mentioned, there's different microbial communities. So they, the microbes, they live like communities like us. It's sort of like, you look at us and then you can sort of break it down into a little micro level, and it's very similar. So they have done fecal transplants. This has been something that's been happening not for that long, but the idea is that they transplant the feces. I know it sounds disgusting, but it's got all the bacteria and everything in it, from a lean person to a non-lean person. And, even doctors are using it to colonate the guts of people that have dysbiosis or an imbalance of healthy to unhealthy bacteria in their gut, and trying to help them grow more healthy bacteria. But the interesting thing that I've been hearing a lot of researchers that are sort of at the forefront of this talk about on podcasts is that, yes, it is beneficial to get that healthy bacteria in the people that haven't got that healthy bacteria growing, but you still have to live a healthy lifestyle, because as we were saying, if the garden you create isn't conducive to keeping those healthy bacteria alive, then they're going to just die off and you're going to go back to that imbalance again. So same for the lean people. It does help to colonate the guts of people that are obese with their microbiome, or with some of the bacteria from their feces. But if they still eat their processed diet and they don't change anything, they're going to die, and the unhealthy ones are going to grow. And microorganisms are very dynamic, and they change very quickly in the response to the host, so the human, you, the environmental factors. So you can change your the bacteria living inside you very, very quickly by making modifications to your lifestyle. So obviously diet, exercise, medications, different exposures to different things. So it is quite, I guess, a positive thing to take away from it, that if you are having a lot of gut issues, or perhaps your health is not as good as it could be, and you've got imbalanced bacteria in your gut, then you can turn it around very rapidly. And they found, so they've done studies on hunter-gatherers, so some modern-day hunter-gatherer societies that are still in Africa and different places around the world that still eat, a pretty much almost completely non-processed diet. They hunt, they eat off the land, they survive off the land, and don't have, modern technology like we do, so they tend to be healthier for that reason. And they find that those people, and generally people that are healthier, leaner, have more diversity in their microbiome, so in the bacteria. So there's different types. People that are less healthy have a much narrower range of the different types of species. So it's important to have a good balance of lots of different bacteria. The ideal ratio is 85% friendly to 15% unfriendly. And you might be thinking to yourself, why would you want unfriendly? Wouldn't you want just 100% friendly? But the thing is, what they've found is that having that 15% unfriendly, it's almost like training for your immune system. So if you imagine like soldiers in the army, if they didn't train, if they didn't do their war games and different drills and exercise and challenge themselves on simulations and things like that, if they had to go to battle, they wouldn't know what they're doing. So it is important to actually have that. Not that you need to go out of your way to try and get it. It will, if you want to try and get up to the 85, and if you can get it down to 15%, you're doing good. But the interesting thing is that we do need that 15% to keep the immune system sharp and in check. Another interesting fact that I've read in a number of different studies is that we've sort of gone through this period of hyper sanitization where we think that bacteria and the microbes are the enemy, so we need to just kill them and then we'll be safe. But the reality is that we live in a soup of these things. They're in the air, they're on every surface that we touch, and they're meant to be there. And our body should be able to interact with them in a healthy way. And as I said, there's lots of reasons that we do need them there as well. And I'm sure that, in another 100 years, we'll probably have a much better understanding of that interaction. So they've found that people with pets or kids that grow up on farms, versus kids that grow up in the city, people from third world countries, they actually have a lot less allergies and autoimmune diseases. I remember this story on a podcast I was listening to, and one of these, he was a famous kickboxing trainer, and he went to Thailand, and Thailand's Muay Thai kickboxing, that's their national sport. And like I do jiu-jitsu myself, and we have kickboxing as well, and it's sort of part of mixed martial arts. And anyway, quite often you get staph, and staph can be very dangerous, and it can spread through a gym very quickly because we're always sweating on the mats and we're wrestling in close contact with each other. So sometimes if you get a cut or something and someone else gets an open wound, and then it spreads really quickly throughout the whole gym. And this kickboxing trainer was in Thailand, and he had staph, and this Thai guy that he was doing some training with, he's like, he's like, oh, you got staph, and he started touching it, and the guy's like, no, what are you doing? It's staph, don't touch it. And he's like, no, Thai people don't get staph. And and it was an interesting example of this, because it's the same as when you go to these places, these highly infectious diseases. Sometimes you go to Bali and drink the water and we get barley belly, whereas the locals drink it no problem. So part of the situation is that their immune systems are a lot more sharper and well trained at being able to sort these things out. And same with kids that grow up on farms, that obviously they're in cow dung and all sorts of stuff, or kids that people that have pets, you're cuddling your dog and things like that. So it actually makes your immune system better. The old saying, we used to tell our kids, play in dirt when you're a kid. There's a reason for that. So why do we need a healthy gut microbiome? You might be asking. All right. So here's some of the benefits of a healthy gut microbiome. It supports gastrointestinal motility. So motility is like, if you imagine your intestines, they have like wave sort of contractions. So it sort of passes the food through there. So motility is like when the broken up food matter can pass through. So they play a role in that. They support the integrity of a healthy gut barrier. So the point where we So if you think about like the inside of your intestines, and then we have that gut barrier that goes into our bloodstream. So we break down our food and it absorbs through that barrier. Like the food gets broken down into very small particles. So they're small enough to fit through that barrier, which is semi-permeable. So that only lets very small parts in. And then it can go into our bloodstream, the nutrients, and our body can absorb it. So it's very important for that relationship. And it also occupies real estate in the gut so that there's no room for pathogens and other things. And they also, they're sort of like your soldiers and army that sort of keep check of things. They are important for synthesizing certain vitamins, K2, B12, folate, thiamine, lots of others. I'm sure that they'll find even more as the years go on. They produce short chain fatty acids, which are important for energy production, for a lot of organs and things like that. And they enhance mood. So 95% of the serotonin, so like that happy hormone, is manufactured by the gut bacteria. So even mood disorders, anxiety, depression, there's so many different things that have an integral relationship with the health of what's living inside your gut. So some potential harms of an unhealthy gut microbiome. So this keeps... allergies. As we sort of alluded to before, people that have not as good or exposure to things, they're more prone to allergies, especially that's can be related to the if you don't have tight junctions at the gut, as we were saying before, that gut barrier. That can be affected by the types of bacteria. Some of the unfriendly bacteria, if you have too many, too much, they release a lot of toxins that affect things like that as well. We mentioned already brain function and even mood regulation, bone health. The list goes on and on. It honestly does. There's relationships, and there's spill-on relationships between cancer, cardiovascular health, diabetes, obesity, the health of your skin, thyroid disorders. It's everything in the body is, we've mentioned this, or I've mentioned it a few times now. Our body is a system of systems. It's a holistic system. Everything works together. As soon as one thing is out of whack, then it has ripple effects into other areas of the body. And that gut health has a major impact on all aspects of our health and all, many different organs and yeah, just the cells in all of our body, really. My gut feel is that this list of things will grow massively. I quite often listen to podcasts and I listen to scientists and people that are at the forefront of this stuff. There's always a bit of a lag. The mainstream information that you get out to the public is always behind the cutting edge research. It can be 10 years behind it, or 20 years even at times. And, when I listen to these guys and they're very excited and they're telling, we're doing this and we're finding this and we think there might be a link between this, it's like it blows your mind at how significant and important this is. I can't overemphasize it. So, trust your gut. A lot of these sayings come from, ancient wisdom that our ancestors had when they paid attention, because they didn't have as many distractions as what we had. They didn't have marketing messages. They had what they called ancient accumulated wisdom from generation to generation. And, their elders would pass on, wisdom to the younger people of the tribes. with no ill intent. They weren't trying to sell them something. We've talked about that a lot, how, you know, we're constantly bombarded with messages of marketing. You go to the supermarket and you go down the health food aisle, and it's got, you know, these packages that look like they're really, really healthy. And when you read the actual ingredients, you see that it's not healthy at all. They're just bastardized. Well, they're really just, it's like a play on your perception. Oh, that looks healthy, so I think it's healthy, and most people don't read the ingredients, so it sells for them. So, signs something is wrong with your gut microbiome. So, you know, there's lots of different, I guess, signs and symptoms. It could be, you know, intestinal pain or bloating or diarrhea, or, you know, perhaps you have bad breath or a lot of flatulence, or just wind in general. These are all signs and symptoms that there may be an imbalance there. Nutrient absorption. So we've talked about the gut microbiome affecting our the barriers and our ability to get nutrients through. So potentially, sometimes if you do have a really imbalanced gut flora, you may be eating healthy food, but the nutrients isn't getting into your bloodstream. You're just sort of passing it through. So the what what disrupts a healthy gut microbiome? There is a lot of different things. So things like medications, they can have an effect on the gut microbiome. Drinking, like especially antibiotics. So antibiotics are like an atom bomb. If you think of it like this is the analogy I always like to explain. And yes, of course, they are a marvel of modern medicine, and they've saved a lot of lives, but they are overprescribed. And so if you think of it like this, imagine you've got your army. So imagine Australia. So we've got our army here, and a foreign country sends their troops over to try and take over Australia. And maybe we're losing the battle a little bit, and we decide to drop an atom bomb. Right? So what happens is we kill all of their soldiers, but we also kill all of our soldiers. So now we're left with no soldiers. And then when the next wave of foreign overseas adversaries come over to attack and try and take over, we've got no army to fight them off. So it's the same if you think in your body. If you drop antibiotics, yes, you're killing whatever's made you sick. You know, whether it's a bacteria, well, it should be a bacteria because obviously it doesn't affect viruses and things like that, but it will kill them and also kill your healthy bacteria in the process. So then you get left with, I've seen it happen many, many times over the years with clients where they get sick and they jump on the antibiotics. Some doctors are a bit trigger happy with the antibiotics. Some doctors are really good and they understand that, you know, you only use them if they're really necessary. But the overprescription leads to people's weakening of their immune system because they're killing their microbiome. And then, you know, you can see how important the microbiome is to our health. So you can only imagine how many different things are going to be affected as a ripple effect of that. Other medications, the birth control pill, diabetes medications, blood pressure medications. There's lots of different medications that have also been known to have an impact on your gut microbiome. That's just the reality of it. So just to be aware of that. C-section birth is another interesting thing. So what they say is that when the baby comes through the vaginal canal, And again, this is all nature. Nature does, nature is extremely complex. And us human beings, even the smartest scientists on the world, we don't understand a fraction of how the complex integration of nature. And sometimes sometimes humans can be a little bit arrogant and think they know it all, and they make mistakes, and there's big repercussions for that. So when we're talking about childbirth, and obviously we're not shaming anyone. Sometimes people have to have a C-section for emergency reasons, and that's I mean, you want your baby to survive, of course, and the mother. But when just something to be aware of, if you are birthed vaginally, then as the baby goes down the vaginal canal, it takes a big gulp of the fluid at the end, and it gets all the bacteria from the mother, and it starts to seed the baby's intestines, and starts to grow its immune system. Whereas if the baby's removed by C-section before then, it doesn't get the opportunity to do that. So that's why quite often babies that are delivered by C-section tend to have high rates of, just eczema, allergies, things like that, asthma. But there is a number of new protocols where when the baby is born by C-section, they're getting like a sponge and sponging it onto the baby. And they call it, so it's like seeding vaginal flora. But anyway, the reason that I sort of mention all this is just to show you again that it's all part of nature. Nature does things for a specific purpose. And when we, I guess, do things that are unnatural to nature, then sometimes we bypass important things. And we need to be aware of that so that we can take proactive action to try and, build up the microbiome in other ways. Processed foods, we've already talked about that. They proliferate unhealthy bacteria, and they don't support healthy bacteria. Artificial sweeteners have been known to affect the gut microbiome. So, what is it? I don't even know what they're called. Coke Zero, Pepsi. I don't even know if Pepsi Max is still around. But, all these drinks with artificial sweeteners, when you see things that are sweet and they're low sugar, just be careful because they might have artificial sweeteners in them. And those are very damaging for your gut microbiome. Chronic stress can affect the gut microbiome, the balance of healthy to unhealthy. Sleep and circadian rhythm disruption. So if you're not getting good cycles of sleep, that definitely has an impact on that gut microbiome. Chlorine, so drinking chlorinated water. So we've talked about that in a previous training. They put the chlorine in the water to kill the bacteria. That could make us sick. But you can filter it out at the end point so that you're not getting that chlorine. Because if you're drinking that chlorine, then it's still going to have that effect that it kills bacteria in your gut, and it may kill good bacteria as well as bad. This is one of my favorite quotes from Hippocrates, and I've got it written in my studio. Illnesses do not come upon us out of the blue. They are developed from small daily sins against nature, and when enough sins have accumulated, illness will suddenly appear. So in other words, sometimes people scratch their head and think, oh, I've gotten sick. It's just come out of the blue. I've done the same thing my whole life, and I've been good as gold. Nothing's ever happened. I haven't changed anything, and now I've got sick. But sometimes it's just those small little daily sins against nature, against your body, against your own biology, that when enough of that has accumulated, things break down. Sometimes people notice it with their weight. They just start to stack on weight when they're like, I've spoken to many people in their 40s, 50s, and they're like, my whole life, I never had to worry about my weight. I was slim, and all of a sudden it stacked on. And it's not necessarily that it's anything new that they've done, but it's just an accumulation of of what they've done over many years. So how to support a healthy gut microbiome? So this is what you might be wondering. All right, we've understood how important this is. Now, how do we get this support and get the good bacteria in our gut? So, as the theme, you may have noticed, live as close to nature as possible. Our circadian rhythms, types of foods that we eat, healthy, whole foods, keeping our body moving. Our body's not designed to be sitting on a chair for 12, 13, 14 hours a day. It's designed to be moving, walking, stretching, bending, squatting, all sorts of stuff. We're not designed to be staring at a phone all day for hours at a time. All of these things, you guys might have noticed when you go out for your bushwalks in nature, you feel amazing. You're breathing that fresh air. You just come alive. You can see the views and you start to remember. It makes you feel happy. And I guarantee you, the hormones that you're producing in your body, those neurotransmitters that are being released are all going to be supportive for health. And of course, avoid things that disrupt that flora balance. So anything like what we talked about, the antibiotics, if you can avoid it, avoid it. Obviously, sometimes it's necessary. Medications, if you can work to trying to be able to naturally reduce them and come off them with the guidance of your doctor, of course. Eating healthy food, not processed foods. All of the things that we've talked about already. Eat a variety of fruit and veggies. So, the old saying, eat the rainbow. Different colored, natural foods, so fruit and veggies, have different balances of nutrients. So it's always beneficial to have a diversity because that's going to support a diverse species of bacteria within your gut, as we've already talked about. Now, this is like a proactive one, which is eating fermented foods. So kimchi, sauerkraut, there's so many different types of them. You want to be careful of the quality. You want to make sure it is a refrigerated one from a health food shop. So I would suggest to go to like an organic shop or a health food shop, have a look at the ingredients, maybe talk to a naturopath or someone like that. To get a good quality one, or someone at the shop. Don't just get your ones off the shelf that are pasteurized in Coles or Woolies, because they're not the same. They're not going to have the bacteria. When they're pasteurized, they're heat treated, it kills everything. So they're a dead food. Or take high quality probiotics. We've talked about this already. Perhaps you want to get the advice of like a good naturopath or someone like that in terms of brands of what would be good. And what can you do? So my 5 gut health tips are, these are the things that I personally do or I recommend for others. So a tablespoon, like a heaped tablespoon of probiotic rich foods in most meals. So like I talked about, the kimchi, the sauerkraut, any fermented food like that, yogurt, good quality yogurt. Some yogurts have very little bacteria in them, the very processed ones. So definitely don't get flavored ones with sugars and things like that, or artificial sweeteners. So I like to have just a small amount. You never eat a bowl of that stuff. You only have a small amount, and it's just colonizing, and then when you eat your healthy food, then it allows those healthy bacteria to proliferate. Live as close to nature as possible, as we've already talked about. Avoid chlorinated water, so filter that out of your water at the end point before you drink it. Avoid medications, go for more natural remedies where possible. And eat low sugar, so sugar proliferates unhealthy bacteria. Artificial sweeteners, as we talked about, and processed foods in general. M's top 5 tips. So stick to a whole, unprocessed food diet. Eat a diversity of plant foods, the rainbow, like we talked about. Same with medications, avoid where you can. Artificials, avoid. Probiotics, good quality one, as we've talked about from a naturopath. And Of course, knowledge is power, but action, you can have all the knowledge in the world, but if you don't do it, then you don't know it, right? So if you don't do it, then you're just getting the theory without the practical experience. And the combination between practical experience and the or practical knowledge, sorry, theoretical knowledge and practical experience, that combination is the key to understanding. So make sure that you do also, start to take immediate action and do some of these things. Go to the shops, buy some probiotics, have a look at your current diet, have a look at, things that you could try and align a little bit more naturally, whether it's your sleep, whether you have a propensity to take a lot of medications that like I'm talking painkillers or anti-inflammatories or, things like that that potentially could be reduced or eliminated. Obviously, if they're prescribed medications, talk to your doctor. So, look, I hope you guys got a lot out of this one and can understand and appreciate how essentially important it is to maintain good gut health. We can't have good optimal overall body health without optimal gut health and a good balance in our microbiome. So make sure you take some of these lessons away and put them into action.